Hey everybody, my name is Gabe Howard and I am excited to be here on the Mighty Live. Here's how the next half hour is going to work. In the comment section, type any question that you have on bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, mental health in general, mental health advocacy, mental illness, psychology, anything that you think that I might be able to answer, and I will do my absolute best to answer them. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm a certified peer supporter, and I'm a person with lived experience with bipolar disorder, and I am the author of Mental Illness is an Asshole and Other Observations. And I've been answering questions like this for a number of years. But I promise you, if I don't know the answer, I won't blow smoke up your ass. I'll just tell you that I don't know, and we'll move on to the next question. So please feel empowered to ask me anything that you want. Now, while you are typing in the questions into the comment section, shorter questions work better, I will tell you a little bit about myself. So as you see right there, I am the author of Mental Illness is an Asshole, which you can get at gabehoward.com. See, look, shameless plug. But I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder back in 2003 when I was committed to a psychiatric hospital. And before that point, I knew nothing about mental illness. My family knew nothing about mental illness. We genuinely and honestly believed that mental illness was something that happened to other people and other families. We did not have any understanding whatsoever of what mental illness was. Listen, we believed television. We thought that TV prepared us for mental health issues, for mental illness, for emotional wellness. We were covered. We had TGI Friday, we had Urkel, and we're thought, hey, there was a very special episode. We now know all there is to know about mental illness. So as I got sicker and sicker and sicker, my parents thought it was a behavioral issue. And it wasn't a behavioral issue, but my poor parents, they just didn't know. And they tried to punish the symptoms of bipolar disorder out of me, which sort of didn't endear me to them. And it was a very large struggle in my home. And that's the best way that I can describe the majority of my childhood and young adult years. They didn't know how sick I was. I didn't know how sick I was. And because of that, I almost died by suicide because I wasn't getting the help that I needed. After I was diagnosed in the psychiatric hospital with bipolar disorder, I thought this is a pardon the pun, a crazy system. This is not right. This is not okay. What I went through and what my family went through, not okay. And I started openly talking about my life with bipolar disorder. I started talking openly about my family's struggles with my bipolar disorder. And all of these people came out of the woodwork and started sharing with me their stories and their issues and their struggles. And I thought to myself, this is so incredibly unfair. Somebody needs to do something about this. And for a good many years, I just sort of sat back and waited. I just waited for somebody to fix it. And then after a while, I sort of got restless. And I thought, I'm somebody, as the story goes. And I want to be able to affect real change. And I started volunteering for a local mental health nonprofit. My family was very supportive. And all of the struggles, the suffering, the ups and downs, and the issues that I had with bipolar disorder started to make a difference for other people. I'm very, very open about living with bipolar disorder. No question is off limits. Just please be polite and please be short. And I will answer as many as I can in the next half hour. All right, that's all about me. Aw, thank you, Sabrina. Up top. That was her giving me a high five. All right, Jasmine, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and talk to hang on. Answer the first question. Pop it on the screen. I'll read it and we'll go from there. What in your opinion is the best way to recover from an episode? I feel like I lost a piece of myself. Jamie, the first thing that I want to say is the best way to recover from an episode is whatever the best way for you is to recover from an episode. Don't let people convince you that you're doing it wrong. As long as you're not harming yourself, somebody else, and you're moving forward in a positive way, then that is the best way for you. So often I see people do something and somebody tells them, well, that's not the best way to move forward, or that's not the fastest way to move forward. And I want to be the first to say that we have to find our own path forward, our own coping mechanisms, and we have to use them. And again, I want to put the big caveat: as long as our coping mechanism isn't causing us more problems, hurting ourselves, or hurting somebody else, we are most likely picking the right path forward. Now, some suggestions that I want to offer, just because I don't want to leave the question hanging, is I take responsibility for the episode, because you're right, I do feel like I lost a piece of myself. And I feel that it is incredibly empowering, and a way to get that piece back is to say to all the people around me, I was really sick. If I wronged people, I take responsibility for that. I say, I'm very sorry that I let you down. I'm very sorry that I hurt you. I'm very sorry that I whatever. How can I make amends? And that's how I begin taking those pieces back. In the early days, my family and friends were just very angry at me. And I was like, well, it's not my fault. I have bipolar disorder. And I walked away. And I was right. It's not my fault. I do have bipolar disorder. But it's not their fault either. And they were very upset at the way that they were treated. I was very upset that they were mad at me, and we were just at arm's length. As soon as I started coming to them and saying, look, I was symptomatic, what can I do? That allowed me to take those pieces of myself back. I kept my friends, I kept my family, and I was making amends for all of those things, which was incredibly empowering. And I learned a lot from those moments. That's what I do. Along with cry in the shower, along with write, along with go for a long walk. There is no wrong way, but sincerely reach out to the people that you may have inconvenienced. It doesn't even have to be hurt, inconvenienced, annoyed. Just say, hey, I'm sorry I was annoying last week. And talk about it. Make up. Go to dinner now. That's how you begin taking control of bipolar, instead of letting it lead you around on the proverbial string. Thank you so much. All right, the next question. Dun, 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 dun. You're welcome, Melissa or Allison. Thank you, Suzanne. I'm sorry. How do you know if you have bipolar disorder? So the first thing I want to say is the way that you know unequivocally that you have bipolar disorder is to be diagnosed by a doctor. Now, if you suspect that you have bipolar disorder, you should get checked out by a doctor. And here's where the world gets very complicated. So many people are like, well, I suspect that I have fill in any mental health condition, but how do I know for sure? And I'm like, well, go to a doctor. No. What symptoms do I look for? I want to check it out. I don't want to bother a doctor if I don't have it. Nobody feels this way about physical illness. People are hacking up, coughing a lot. They've had a runny nose for 3 months. They don't know what's wrong with them. They're walking with a limp. Their back hurts. They don't know if they have a pinched nerve, sciatica. They lift wrong. They need it. They don't know. They just know that they don't like something, and they go to a doctor and ask the doctor to check it out. For some reason, in mental health issues, mental illness, we feel that we must go and tell the doctor, hey, I have bipolar disorder. No, one, that's the wrong way to go about getting mental health care. All you need to know is that something is bothering you. You suspect. The suspicion is enough. You may not have bipolar disorder. I don't know, but that's the point. Neither do you. And not knowing is very, very problematic. Listen, I could list off the symptoms of bipolar disorder, but you can Google that. You can Google symptoms of bipolar disorder and see if they match. That's not necessarily very meaningful. You can run over to any website, psychcentral.com has quizzes, and see if it suggests that you see a doctor. In fact, you're welcome to Google bipolar quiz at psychcentral.com and take it. But the bottom line is, until you meet with a professional, until you meet with a doctor, you're never going to know for sure. And I feel that knowing for sure is so incredibly powerful, Suzanne. So please make an appointment with a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or even your general practitioner, and explain to them why you feel that you may have bipolar disorder, and they'll check you out. And it'll be worth it. All right, remember, ask me anything. Short comments work better. I will answer as many as I can. All righty. Dun, 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 dun. Do you think medication is essential for recovery with bipolar disorder? I do believe that it's essential. I know that sometimes that's a loaded, it's sort of a loaded question, right? So many people get upset by it and they say, well, they don't need it, or and maybe they don't. I am not a doctor. I am not a researcher. The vast majority, in fact, every single person that I've ever seen who says that they don't need medication, they have relapsed. Maybe it takes 6 months, maybe it takes a year, maybe it takes 5 years. The nature of bipolar disorder is that it's very cyclical, meaning you have the extreme highs, you have the extreme lows, and then you're just right in the middle. And that middle just happens because of the cyclical nature of the illness. I see many, many people that start a new diet, they start an exercise plan, they start yoga, they move out of their spouse's house, they get a divorce, some life-changing thing happens, and they have this bout of stability that is just the natural inclination of the illness to move toward the center. And they're like, aha, I don't need medication anymore because it turns out I was in a bad marriage, a bad place. I needed yoga, I needed CBD oil, I needed essential oils. It just on and on and on. And that holds up for a while because, hey, again, do nothing, the illness will naturally sway toward the center. The problem is it always swings back. Medication is not the only thing that I think is essential for bipolar disorder wellness. I think it is one part. I think that therapy, coping skills, peer support, goals, understanding our illness, I think they all work together to give us the best odds to fight bipolar disorder. I do think it is one of those things that helps tremendously, makes the journey tolerable, and allows things like therapy, coping skills, peer support to take hold in a much better way. I strongly recommend seeing a doctor and getting, and this is important, everybody says, do you think medication is essential for recovery for bipolar disorder? I want to edit your question a little bit, Shannon. I think the right medication is essential for recovery in bipolar disorder. And that's the medicine that doesn't have undesirable side effects, or that makes you feel sleepy, or that gives you a lot of weight gain, or causes other problems. Working with your doctor to find the correct medication that gives you the best odds is something that I do feel is an essential part of the recovery from bipolar disorder. Thank you so much, Shannon, for that very important question. Hey, she posted the quiz. Thank you, Camera. Hey, big round of applause for Camera. She works behind the scenes. She is incredible. She never gets the credit that she is due. And well, I just think that is shameful. So everybody, a big round of applause for Camera. Give her this in the comment section because she deserves it. Camera, thank you. All right, are we ready for the next question? Dun, 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 dun. Why do we have relapses even on medication? Thank you, Lisa, for asking this. There's several reasons. The number one reason is because bipolar disorder is mean. It's mean. It's a cruel, unfair illness. So, and it cheats. Let me give a few scenarios. Let's say that you are perfectly stable on the correct medication. And in fact, you've been stable for years. Our bodies, as they age, start to react to the medication differently. Suddenly, the medication that kept us in perfect balance at 25, it's not keeping us in perfect balance at 45. So that, and all we did was age. It's not our fault. Our liver just started breaking down the medication differently, which gave us different results. Maybe our diet changed. Who knows? There's also, diet and exercise factors. Listen, it doesn't matter if you're on the right medication. If you eat a bag of potato chips for every meal and sit around all day, you're going to start to feel bad, and that could cause a relapse because eating healthy foods, going for a walk elevates our moods, and that's important even with medication. And then finally, there's just bad luck. There's just literal bad luck. You've done everything right, and bipolar found a way to push through. Because, listen, mental illness is an asshole. I titled the book that way for a reason, because it cheats. Mental illness cheats. Bipolar disorder cheats. The most important thing is you can never turn your back. Taking medication doesn't mean that we let our guard down. It means that we're winning when we're on the right medication and when we're stable, but we still need to track symptoms, because tracking those symptoms will allow us to get ahead and hopefully prevent a relapse. But medication, therapy, symptom tracking, coping mechanisms, and understanding our illness all work in concert to help us prevent relapses. Medication alone is probably not enough. Thank you so, so, so much for that question. Thank you. All right, the next question. How do you know that the diagnosis is correct? I've learned a lot about ADHD over the past couple of years, and I think there is more to my diagnosed depression and anxiety. Christina, thank you so much. I believe in a partnership between patient and doctor. I can't say it any more plainly. If the doctor is just telling you and not asking your questions, not listening to what you have discovered, not assuaging your fears, or even responding to any research that you've done, even if the research that you've done is deeply flawed, a doctor or a therapist should still take time to address it with you because there's a reason that you're drawn to it. And that's what a partnership is. A partnership is not the doctor telling you what to do and you doing it. And I want to be very clear, a partnership is also not you telling the doctor what you want and the doctor doing it. A partnership is a good give and take of information, of symptoms, so that you both agree to try things or not try things and move forward in a way that is ultimately beneficial for the patient. So if you believe that your diagnosis is incorrect and your doctor or your therapist is not willing to discuss this with you, the best advice I have is to try to find a new doctor or a therapist because it's vital. It's vital to understand and accept your diagnosis. And if you don't, that can lead to cracks in the recovery system. If you are not able to switch doctors for any reason, I highly recommend trying to find a support group to talk about it. But keep in mind, the only person who can change your diagnosis or ultimately give you one is a medical professional. Please don't self-diagnose yourself. The last thing that I want to say is sometimes we get really hung up on our diagnosis. And I understand it. I really, really do. But I met a gentleman with bipolar disorder who, when I met him, he was 74 years old. And we were having lunch one day and he was talking to me about everything. And I said, well, how long have you lived with bipolar disorder? And he looked up and said, I don't have bipolar disorder. And I said, oh, I thought that you had bipolar disorder. He says, no, I have manic depression. And I said, well, manic depression is bipolar disorder. And he said, no. I was diagnosed with manic depression 50 years ago, and I know that it has become bipolar disorder. I know that it has changed, but all of my coping skills, my thinking, and everything is surrounding manic depression. So that is what I choose to call it. I know that it's incorrect. You know, he's a very logical man. He knows when he fills his prescription, goes to his doctors, he knows what's on his insurance chart. But even though he knows that the way that he thinks about it is now incorrect, it works for him. And that has a lot of value. I learned a lot from that moment because I was ready to pounce and say, no, we must use facts and update it. But he explained it in a way that made sense to me. If you believe that something different is going on, don't worry about what's written in a chart. Experience your own experience the way that you want to experience it. Just keep in mind the way that it may be charted medically, the way that your doctor may see it. You might not be entirely on the same page. But if it helps you to look at it a little differently, I do think there's value in that, as long as you understand that that's not the way your doctor is treating you and you can come to a consensus. I think about that gentleman a lot because, yeah, I think if they changed the name bipolar disorder tomorrow, I'd have a struggle. I've been Gabe Howard who lives with bipolar disorder for 15 years now. I don't want to say I'm Gabe Howard who lives with a new name. It's let's not get hung up on the label and let's start looking at our goals and our wellness. But if you do want to get this changed, partner with your doctor. Thank you so much, Christina. I hope that wasn't too much information. Shannon. All right. Shannon writes, I'm a psychiatric nurse and I've never seen recovery from bipolar disorder without medication. So thank you for your opinion. I agree with you. Shannon, thank you so much. I love to empower people and I want to empower people and I believe in empowering people and I understand. Believe me, I was a 25-year-old man who had a pill minder bigger than my grandmother's. I understand the desire to not want to do it. I get it, to not want to be part of that and to want to find ways to do it on our own. But listen, medication is on our own. Medication doesn't randomly pop into our mouth. The symptoms that we give a psychiatric nurse like you, Shannon, the feedback that we give you, the partnership that we give you, that is us doing it. And I think we need to reframe that medication does it for us. Medication helps. It doesn't do it for us. If you are taking your medication as prescribed, working with your doctor, learning your coping skills, going to therapy, you are doing it on your own. And don't let anybody tell you that, oh, medication is doing it. You should do it on your own. I am doing it on my own. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. All right, camera, the next question. Oh, Terrell, thank you. Boo, 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 boo. I love it when people say they're buying my book. It makes me so excited when that little ding comes in, because it doesn't happen very often, and I get to go in my basement and like pack up the book. I know, Terrell, thank you so very much. All right, the next question. Is it possible to retrain our brains? Emily, I believe so. I believe it's possible for everybody. The way that we think about things, I think our brains are a lot more malleable than we think. And I think it starts with really, really small things. Recently, I started working on a project with a friend of mine. And it was a massive project, and we're very proud of ourselves for doing it together. And I kept saying, all right, the deadline is Friday, the deadline is Friday, the deadline is Friday. And, she would, we were trying to make the deadline for Friday, and deadline. And finally, one day she goes, call it a goal. I said, what? She said, don't call it a deadline, call it a goal. And I said, well, why? And she goes, because a deadline is something that you miss. A deadline, it's got dead right in it. A deadline is scary. It's arching over you. It's evil almost. It just sounds it, but a goal you achieve. So instead of saying our deadline is noon, say our goal is noon. And we're going to meet that goal. We are going to achieve that goal. Working together, we are going to just make the goal happen. Yeah. Believe it or not, that is retraining our brain. I avoid deadlines. There's no more deadlines. Goal is Friday. It's a hard goal, but it's still a goal. And that is a small way to retrain your brain to look at things differently. It's like a glass half full and half empty kind of scenario, right? Don't say that it's half empty, say that it's half full. All of these things do begin to add up and change our outlook. That's commonly referred to as reframing. And I really, really think that it helps. But remember, when we say retraining our brains, everybody tries to think of big things. It start small. Start really, really small. It's not a deadline, it's a goal. Glass is not half empty, it's half full. Small things, and then work your way out. Sometimes I think we start too big. We want to take the final test for college on day one. Yeah, that's freshman orientation day. All right. You don't take boards until year 4. All right. Thank you so much, Emily. Oh, thank you so much, The Mighty, for plugging my book. I love it when they do that. Thank you. I'll even sign it. Swag. Is it possible to have bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder? Doctors have told me different answers. Erin, I am not a doctor, so I am not 100% sure. It was my understanding that yes, the answer was yes, they are 2 separate diagnoses. I'm not sure 100%, again, because I don't have medical training, and I know that things change constantly. I have known many people who are diagnosed with both, and a doctor has diagnosed them with both, but I know that sometimes the thinking in mental health can shift from practitioner to practitioner ever so slightly. Some practitioners might be uncomfortable with diagnosing both for whatever reason. I do believe the answer is it is possible. However, you're going to want to work with your doctor to make sure, because ultimately you and your doctor have to be on the same page. So thank you. I'm sorry I don't have yeah, Shannon writes, yes, you can have both, but it's kind of rare. She's a nurse practitioner, a psychiatric nurse practitioner, but thank you. But please work with your doctor. If you're uncomfortable with the answer that your doctor is giving you, that's definitely a sign to maybe ask somebody else or ask a therapist. Sometimes people don't have time to ask their psychiatrist or their prescriber some of these questions because, the 15-minute med check. This is a good thing to bring up in therapy. A good therapist, whether it's a psychologist or a licensed therapist, even a licensed clinical counselor, they understand a lot about the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, and that'll allow you, that's what doctors use to diagnose. So they can maybe assuage some of these fears. So don't hesitate to make an appointment with a therapist and talk about some of the things that you and your prescriber, you and your doctor talked about. Because I feel that that really, really helps, especially in the crunch of doctors not having 100% of the time to work with us. Thank you so much, everyone. If a particular situation only causes the symptoms, is it still a bipolar disorder? This is where it gets really, really tough. If it's truly the only time it happens is something else, meaning you're triggered by that thing to cause a symptom that is similar to bipolar disorder, maybe it's trauma, maybe it's post-traumatic stress disorder. It could be a lot of things, be complex trauma. It could be anxiety. It really could be a lot of things, but mental illness is difficult to diagnose, and I would have, and any doctor would have, a lot more follow-up questions. Are we sure it's just that? Are we sure it's just this person? What triggers it? And ultimately, we want to focus on the treatment. I don't know what that situation is. Not all situations are created equal, right? If the situation is going to a Burger King, well, we can avoid Burger King for the rest of our life. If our situation is when I go into a bathroom, well, we can't avoid bathrooms. So that would raise the level of seriousness and change any potential diagnosis. The straight up answer is I don't know for 100%, but just know that mental illness is extremely difficult to diagnose, and it often involves working with your psychologist, your psychiatrist, a practitioner, multiple times over a period of many months to really decide what you're diagnosed with and move forward. So thank you for posing that question, and I wish you the best of luck on your journey. All right, next question. What about bipolar disorder with mixed features? Is this type harder to treat? Thank you so much, Cynthia, for asking this question. Listen, I think that the hardest bipolar to treat is the one that you have, right? Because it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. Treating our own bipolar disorder is hard enough, right? We could make the argument that it's harder to treat. I have bipolar 1 with psychotic features. So, here I am on an antipsychotic. I've had psychosis. I have delusions. I also have anxiety disorder. And I could make the argument until I'm blue in the face that sounds really, really hard to treat. And hey, maybe it is. I don't know. But that doesn't provide any comfort to the people around us. That doesn't provide any comfort in the support group. Who cares? I personally believe that they're all equally hard to treat. It's our lives, right? I think if we start looking not at whether it's harder or more difficult or who has it worse, and just, start looking at, okay, bipolar disorder is difficult. It's hard to treat. It's frustrating. It's all encompassing. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's hard. And then we just focus on that and move forward. I think that'll move us forward a lot better than whether or not someone else has it harder, whether or not we could have it harder, whether or not. The stuff that comes up during the diagnosis process and the treatment process, it can be extraordinarily difficult, and everybody's journey varies. Relapse is different for everybody. Finding the right meds is different for everybody. The reality is it's just hard. It's just hard on all of us. And I don't know if it's harder to treat from a medical perspective, but from a personal perspective, they're all hard. They're just all hard. Thank you so, so much, Cynthia. I'm having a difficult time with anxiety and depression lately, and I have been off of medication for about 10 years. I have had a horrible reaction to medication in the past where it made me want to kill myself. I'm very scared and worried to go back on medication because of this. Any advice? Mike, thank you so much for saying this. I completely understand the fear of medication side effects. They are extraordinarily reasonable to have. We never, ever want the cure to be worse than the disease and the disorder. So the first advice that I have is those are real concerns. Those are legitimate and real concerns, and you should open with that with any doctor. 100%. You should walk in and say, I am very scared and I'm very worried to go back on medication because 10 years ago I went on a medication and this happened. This is the medication I was on. This is the dose I was on. These are what the feelings felt like, looked like. This is everything that I went through. What can we do to ensure this doesn't happen again? How can I be monitored? How can I be watched? I want to stay away from that class of medication because clearly I had an adverse reaction in the past. What can we do? I want a follow-up appointment in 2 weeks, for example, and on and on and on and on and on. The reality is medication is not risk-free. It does come with side effects, and those side effects can be scary. But living our lives with untreated mental illness is equally scary. And doctors are there, nurse practitioners are there, psychologists are there, therapists are there to watch you and to monitor you. The bad side effect is absolutely scary, and I completely understand. But I was in a car accident when I was 16, and I didn't want to drive again. It was scary, and I was like, no, I'm done with cars. My father, he wasn't having that because he didn't want to haul my ass around. So he's like, get back in the car, and I'm glad he did. He was not that mean. I want everybody to know he understood, and he helped me get back in the car and drive again. And I'm so glad he did, because imagine if I would have said, hey, I had a bad reaction to cars. I'm done with them, right? And we have to consider that with medication too. It is not unheard of or unreasonable to is part and parcel of it. However, we must feel empowered to pick up the phone immediately and say, I'm having those thoughts again. I'm having this again. What can I do to get checked out? And telling your doctor that is the first step toward making that happen. So yeah, just lead with that. Lead with that with your prescriber, and be brave. And I'm very sorry that you had a bad reaction. And I'm also very sorry that it took 10 years to try again. I know how frustrating that can be, and I want somebody to honor it. All right, camera, we have time for one more question. Oh, Shannon says, pill shaming is real. Thank you for addressing that. I often get shamed for being on meds because it's not real recovery and it's a crutch. Thank you for making me feel a bit better. Look, I don't understand why people do this. I'm just out here trying to live my best life. I mean, if we have to go back to everything natural, we need to get rid of cars. We can't live in houses. I mean, forget it. Cell phones aren't natural. Carrying all the human information in our pockets is abnormal. That wasn't even available when I was in high school. I'm tired of this real recovery stuff. Real recovery is leading your best life. And what it looks like for you and what it looks like for somebody else is going to be a world of difference. This is my favorite example, and I promise I'll stop talking. My medication causes me a slight tremor. I don't know if you can see it on the thing, but I don't care. I'm not a fine artist. I'm not a concert pianist. I'm not a violinist. I'm not a musician. I don't care. My handwriting was already garbage. I am willing to live with this. But that doesn't mean that I should expect everybody to live with it. Because if you're a fine artist, a pianist, a violinist, an engineer, whatever, that is an unacceptable side effect for you. And that's okay. I think we need to start looking at it that way. Whenever I get a headache, I take Tylenol. Tylenol is not natural, but I don't want the headache. But I guess I use the crutch. Oh, come on. We need to stop doing this to each other. Life is so hard, and this is illness. And we must support each other's journeys, however it looks, because it's going to look different for all of us because we're all different. All right, we have time for one more question, camera. Thank you all so much for being here. Do you think triggers make our emotions harder to deal with during the day? Yeah. Yes. Emily, yes. You know how many times I have been going about my day, minding my own business, just trying to get my work done, just trying to be happy, just trying to get to dinner, just literally just doing my own thing. And I round a corner and I see something on TV or I smell a smell, and my whole day, just like that, just brings me right back. I have a panic attack or an anxiety attack, or the wind gets knocked out of me. Yeah, triggers are a huge pain. And learning to cope with them, learning to manage them, learning to avoid them, learning to challenge them, learning to harness them, learning to beat them is something that I have spent years in therapy doing. And I'm never going to be perfect at it. I think you've hit the nail on the head, though. They do make things harder to deal with. And that's why working on them in therapy, figuring out what those triggers are, addressing them, and lowering their impact through coping skills, through training, through experience, through resiliency, through time is an incredibly worthwhile goal. And listen, That's something that medication can't get you. And that's why I always say that medication and therapy, medication and coping skills, medication and peer support, they all go hand in hand. There's no one cure. We must look at the whole person. You can have the greatest therapy and the greatest meds in the world, but if you're not paying attention to your sleep, diet, exercise, yeah, you're going to feel bad. So yeah, I do think that triggers can knock us on our ass, but understanding that they can, not judging yourself for them, learning about them, those are the steps towards lessening their impact and to wellness. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, please, this is my book. I sincerely look, it's 380 pages of very, very awesome. It's even got my picture on the back. Well, I pointed wrong. I'll sign it for you. I'll mail it. I'll include some swag. Who knows what I'll throw in the bag, but there'll be some cool stuff. I really appreciate you spending the last 35 minutes or so with me. Thank you. Please be well, and I'll see everybody next time here on The Mighty.